everybody, welcome back to another astrology video. So in the last video I talked about how to tell if you have a day chart or how to tell if you have a night chart. In this video I'm going to talk a little bit about what a birth chart actually is. So if you want to check out the last video, I'll link it down below. But let's just discuss like what your birth chart is. So it's a snapshot of the sky at the moment that you were born. And it basically just is composed of planets, signs, houses, and aspects. So planets are associated with mythical gods and goddesses, and you can kind of think of them in that way, right? Like divine characters who are at play in our lives. So for example, I'm going to be looking down at some notes because I don't have this totally memorized, but Mercury, the Romans associated Mercury with Mercurius, the Greeks associated Mercury with Hermes, the Babylonians associated Mercury with Nebu, and the Indians associated Mercury with Buddha. So, you know, we can kind of look and see some of these mythical associations and see that Hermes was the messenger of Zeus, and so we kind of think about Mercury as doing messenger type things, right? Like writing, communication, language. So in addition to thinking of the planets, you know, as these divine characters in our lives, there's another like more scientific way to think about planets, which is them corresponding to different qualities of like hot, dry, wet, and cold, and you know, thinking about the planets as being any combination of those qualities and what that means. So that's just another way to think about planets, and you can use them, you know, those two ways of thinking at the same time. Okay, so the next component of a birth chart are the signs. The signs tell you how things are going to operate in your chart. So signs have many different classifications, which determine, you know, how they color the planets. So, for example, Aries moves really quickly. Okay, so it's a masculine sign. It initiates action, and it does so pretty boldly. So if you have planets in the sign of Aries, your planets are going to be kind of colored by how Aries operates. So any planets in Aries are probably going to move more quickly. They're going to be more masculine in nature, and they're going to tend to initiate things, you know, rather than sustain things or be adaptable. So the signs also have territorial correspondences. So there are signs in the chart where certain planets are completely comfortable. You could say they're at home. There are signs in the chart where the planets are very uncomfortable. And then there are signs where a planet is maybe more honored, and there are signs where a planet is considered to be dishonored or disrespected. So for example, Mars is completely at home in the signs of Aries and Scorpio. So if your Mars falls in those signs, Mars has the greatest ability to bring about the best of its significations in your life. Okay, so the next component of the birth chart are the houses. There are 12 houses, and they correspond with different areas of life, different topics. So the first house talks about, you know, everything to do with the native, the person whose birth chart it is. Fourth house is, you know, home and family, foundation. Seventh house is partnerships, and 10th house is your public reputation. So the final component of a birth chart are the aspects. Aspects sort of define the relationships between the planets. So there's considered to be 2 harmonious aspects and 2 unharmonious aspects. The harmonious aspects are trines and sextiles. Unharmonious aspects are squares and oppositions. So, you know, trines and sextiles are going to bring more good into your life, and squares and oppositions are going to be perceived as more difficult or challenging. So for example, if you had, you know, Jupiter trine a planet in your chart, that relationship would be very supportive. Whereas if you had Mars square a planet in your chart, that would be experienced likely, more negatively and more challengingly. So yeah, those are, you know, the 4 basic components of a birth chart, as well as just a little explanation of what a chart actually is.